It happened on an ordinary Thursday evening, the kind of day where nothing feels particularly special. But you remember every detail afterward because it's the day everything changes. My name's Rachel, and I never thought I'd be the kind of person telling a story like this. I work at a small accounting firm, live in a quiet neighborhood outside of Denver, and, until a few months ago, I thought I had a pretty stable marriage. My husband, Derek, works in construction management. We met in college. He was funny, charming, a little reckless, but he had this way of making life feel less heavy. We'd been married for 6 years, and while not everything was perfect, I honestly thought we were doing fine. That night, I was staying at a motel just outside the city for a work trip. Nothing fancy, just a roadside place with flickering lights and that strange stale smell all motels seem to have. My coworker Lena and I had spent the entire day at a client site, going through financial records. We grabbed dinner afterward, shared a few laughs, and then went our separate ways to rest before driving home the next morning. I remember calling Derek before bed. He sounded distracted, said he was just tired and would call me back later. I didn't think much of it. Married life comes with quiet nights, right? Sometimes people are just tired. But around midnight, I woke up and couldn't shake this uneasy feeling. You know when your gut tells you something's off, but you can't explain why. That's how it felt. I told myself I was overthinking, took a shower, and decided to check out early. I figured I could just drive home and sleep in my own bed. When I walked outside, the parking lot was half empty, except my car was gone. At first, I thought maybe I'd parked somewhere else. I even walked around the building twice. But no, it was definitely gone. My heart started racing. I went to the front desk, hoping maybe the car had been towed. But the clerk just shrugged and said no reports had come in. They called the local police, and after taking my statement, one of the officers told me it was probably a joyride theft, common in that area. He offered to drop me off at home while they filed the report. The ride home felt endless. The city lights blurred past the window, and my mind wouldn't stop spinning. Losing a car is stressful, sure, but it wasn't just that. It was the timing, the feeling that something bigger was happening, something I didn't see yet. When we finally pulled up to my house, the first thing I noticed was that Derek's truck was in the driveway. The lights inside were still on, even though it was nearly 2 a.m. That struck me as odd. Derek usually fell asleep early. I thanked the officer, stepped out of the car, and walked up the porch. My hands were shaking a little as I reached for the doorknob. I remember thinking, I'll tell him what happened. We'll figure this out together. But when I opened the door, the living room light hit something that made my stomach drop. There was a woman's purse sitting on the couch. And it wasn't mine. For a few seconds, I just stood there in the doorway, staring at that purse. It was small, black, with a gold clasp, the kind of thing I'd never owned. My mind instantly went through every possible explanation. Maybe it belonged to one of Derek's coworkers, maybe someone dropped it off, maybe, but deep down, I already knew. The air inside the house felt different, heavy, warm, like it was holding its breath. I could hear faint movement upstairs, a soft creak in the floorboards, and the distant hum of our bedroom fan. My pulse started pounding in my ears. I didn't want to go up there. Every instinct told me to walk away, call someone, do anything but open that door. But I had to know. So I took the stairs slowly, one at a time, my hand gripping the railing like it was the only thing keeping me standing. At the top, I could see the light from our bedroom spilling into the hallway. The door was half open, and then I heard laughter, a woman's laugh. Quiet, breathy, intimate. It felt like the world went silent around me. I stood there for a few seconds, frozen. Then I pushed the door open. Derek was there, in our bed, with a woman I didn't recognize. For a moment, none of us moved. Derek's eyes went wide, and he shot up like he'd been burned. The woman gasped and grabbed the blanket to cover herself. My hands were shaking so badly I thought I might drop my phone. Rachel, what are you? Derek started, but his voice broke off. I came home early, I said quietly. My voice didn't even sound like mine. Someone stole my car. The police drove me home. He just stared at me. No words, no excuses, just that guilty silence people make when they know there's no way to talk their way out of what they've done. I turned to the woman. She looked younger than me, maybe late 20s, long dark hair, nervous eyes. She clutched the blanket tighter, like that would make her disappear. I think you should leave, I said to her. My tone was calm, almost too calm. She didn't say anything. She just grabbed her things, avoided looking at me, and hurried out of the room. I could hear her footsteps rushing down the stairs, the front door opening and closing. Then it was just Derek and me. He tried to say something. I could see the words forming, excuses maybe, or apologies, but I didn't want to hear them. How long? I asked. He swallowed. Rachel, please, it's not how long. He looked down. A few months. I felt my knees go weak, and I had to grab the doorframe to keep from falling. I wasn't even crying, not yet. It was like my body was in shock, refusing to let the emotion out. I trusted you, I said softly. I've been out there working late, traveling, trying to keep us afloat, and you were here. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. I know, I messed up. I didn't mean for this to happen, Rachel. It just did. Those words, it just happened, hit me harder than anything else. Like cheating was an accident, something he tripped and fell into. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at him. Really looked at him, and realized I didn't even recognize the man standing there. Pack a bag, I said finally. You can leave tonight, Rachel, now. He hesitated, but he knew better than to argue. I stood there in silence while he threw a few clothes into a duffel bag, avoiding my eyes the whole time. When he finally walked out, I didn't follow him. I didn't need to see him go. When the door shut behind him, I sat down on the edge of the bed, the same bed where my marriage had just died, and for the first time, I cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, exhausted tears that wouldn't stop coming. And through the tears, one question kept echoing in my mind. If he was here all along, why was my car gone? I barely slept that night. I just sat there in the dark, staring at the wall, the faint smell of someone else's perfume still lingering in the room. It made me sick. Every time I tried to close my eyes, I saw them, in our bed, in my house, living some secret life I'd been blind to. But no matter how much my mind replayed the betrayal, I couldn't stop thinking about the other strange piece of the night, my missing car. It didn't make sense. Derek hadn't asked about it at all when I told him what happened. Not once. He hadn't even looked surprised. That morning, I called the police station to follow up. They hadn't found anything yet. The officer I spoke to sounded calm, almost routine, like this sort of thing happened every day. He said they'd contact me if the car turned up. After that, I made coffee, even though it felt pointless. The kitchen looked the same, but everything about it felt different. Every corner of the house carried this quiet weight, like it knew something I didn't. I went through the motions, called my boss, told him something personal had come up, that I'd need a few days. He didn't ask questions. I think my voice gave enough away. By the afternoon, I was numb. I started gathering Derek's things, his tools, his shoes, the shirts he left draped over chairs. I put everything into boxes, not because I was ready to move on, but because I couldn't stand to see any trace of him around. And that's when something strange happened. While packing up the closet, I found a set of car keys, my car keys, buried under a pile of his jackets. My heart dropped. I stared at them for a long moment, turning them over in my hand. It didn't make sense. I had my keys with me at the motel. I knew I did. I'd used them to lock the car before going to bed. So how were they here? My mind started racing. I tried to piece it together, but every possibility led to the same sick conclusion. Derek must have driven to the motel while I was there. I felt my stomach twist. Was that woman the same one I'd just caught in our bed? Did they use my car to go there? The more I thought about it, the more wrong it felt, like there was still something I wasn't seeing. I needed answers. I picked up my phone and called Derek. He didn't answer. I tried again. Nothing. On the third call, he finally picked up, his voice tired, cautious. What do you want, Rachel? Where's my car? I asked. He hesitated. What do you mean? Don't play dumb with me, Derek. My car was stolen from the motel. Except I just found my keys, in your closet. There was a long silence on the line. Then he said quietly, I don't think you want to know, Rachel. My heart dropped into my stomach. Tell me, I said. He sighed heavily, like he'd been carrying something too heavy to hold. Your car wasn't stolen, he said finally. I borrowed it, that night. I didn't think you'd come home early. I was going to bring it back before you noticed. I gripped the phone tighter. You borrowed it. For what, Derek? To drive her around. To take her to the motel. He didn't answer right away. Then, in a voice that barely sounded human, he said, Rachel, it wasn't just her. My body went cold. What do you mean? I asked. He hesitated again, and when he finally spoke, his words made my knees buckle. There were others. When Derek said those words, there were others. It was like the air got sucked out of the room. I didn't even realize I'd stopped breathing until my chest started to ache. For a few seconds, I just stood there, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process it. My mind went blank, like it refused to absorb what he was saying. Others. I finally whispered. What are you talking about? He let out a shaky breath. Rachel, it wasn't serious. None of it was serious. I don't even know how to explain it. It just got out of control. I felt something snap inside me. Not serious, I said, my voice trembling. You cheated on me with multiple women, in our house, and you're saying it wasn't serious. He didn't respond. All I could hear was his breathing, uneven and heavy. Derek, how many? I asked. He stayed silent for so long that I thought he'd hung up. Then he said quietly, 3, maybe 4. I don't remember. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd that my body didn't know what else to do. You don't remember? I was lonely, he said. You were always gone for work. You'd come home exhausted. You'd barely talk to me. I felt invisible. That excuse, that pathetic justification. It was like pouring gasoline on a fire. So instead of talking to me, you just found comfort with strangers, while sleeping in my bed, using my car. Rachel, please, he said, his voice cracking. I know it's awful. I've already lost you. Don't make me lose everything else, too. I hung up. I couldn't listen to another word. I dropped the phone on the counter and just stood there, shaking. My reflection in the kitchen window looked like someone else, someone older, colder, someone who had finally run out of tears. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but all I did was whisper to the empty room, "Who are you, Derek?" For the next hour, I paced the house, replaying every moment of our relationship. All the times Head said he was working late, the sudden showers after coming home. The nights had been oddly distant. All of it lined up now, fitting together into a picture I didn't want to see. And then I remembered something else. The motel. The woman I'd seen with him in our bed, she hadn't looked like she expected me. When she ran out of the house, she had left something behind, a small silver bracelet on the floor by the nightstand. I'd noticed it earlier and slipped it into my pocket without thinking. I took it out now and looked at it. It had a tiny charm shaped like a wing. On the back, engraved so faintly I almost missed it, were 2 initials, a .C. My stomach tightened. I knew those initials. A few months earlier, Derek had introduced me to a new friend from his old job, a woman named Anna Collins. She had come over for dinner once, friendly, soft-spoken, said she worked in marketing. I remember Derek laughing at her jokes more than mine. It couldn't be her, could it? I opened my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and found her number. My hands were shaking as I pressed call. It rang twice. Hello. A woman answered. Anna? I said quietly. It's Rachel. There was a pause, too long to be innocent. Oh, she said finally. Rachel, hi. My throat felt tight. You left something at my house. Silence. Then, so faintly I could barely hear it, she whispered. Oh my God. The moment Anna whispered those words, oh my God, I knew. I didn't need any confession. Her tone said everything. You were with him, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a shaky breath on the other end. Rachel, I'm so sorry. Don't. I cut her off. Don't tell me you're sorry. I just want to know why. She hesitated. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. I swear. Derek and we started talking a few months ago, just as friends. He said things were rough between you two. He made it sound like you didn't care about him anymore. I laughed bitterly. So he told you I was the problem. It wasn't like that, she said quickly, but her voice cracked. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't even know you were still together at first. At first, I repeated, and when you found out, she went silent. That silence was worse than any excuse she could have given me. Did you know he was with other women too? I asked. Her breath hitched. Other women. I almost felt sorry for her then. Almost. She thought she was special to him, just like I had. Yeah, I said. You weren't the only one. There was a long pause, and a quiet sob. Oh God, I didn't know. I thought. She stopped, voice breaking. He told me he was leaving you. Of course he did. That was the script. The same one every liar uses when they want to have both lives at once. I don't even know why I'm calling, I said, rubbing my temples. Maybe I just needed to hear it out loud. Rachel, she said softly, I don't expect forgiveness. But please believe me, he's not who you think he is. He lies about everything. I wanted to tell her I already knew that, but then she said something that made my heart stop. The night at the motel he told me he borrowed your car because his wouldn't start. He picked me up, we stayed there, and then he left early. He said he was going to take care of something before you got back. I froze. Take care of something, yes. He said he had to drop something off at a storage unit he rented. I didn't ask questions, but he seemed nervous. Like, really nervous. He kept checking his phone. My pulse quickened. Do you know where the storage unit is? No, she said. But I remember seeing a cane with a tag on it. It said something like lockbox storage, Route 89. I didn't respond right away. My thoughts were spinning. The car, the motel, the lies, and now this mysterious storage unit. What could he possibly be hiding there? Rachel, Anna said after a moment, whatever you're thinking of doing, please be careful. As unpredictable. I hung up without answering. For a while, I just stood in my kitchen, staring at the wall. My life had collapsed in less than 24 hours. And yet there was still this nagging feeling that I hadn't reached the bottom. Yet, that something darker was waiting to surface. So I grabbed my coat, got into my backup car, the old sedan I hadn't sold yet, and started driving toward Route 89. As the miles rolled by and the sun began to set behind me, I kept replaying Derek's words over and over. I don't think you want to know. He was right about one thing. Whatever I was about to find, I probably didn't want to know. By the time I reached Route 89, the sun had already dipped below the horizon. The world was cast in that dim blue light that makes everything feel colder than it is. I drove slowly, scanning both sides of the road for the sign Anna mentioned, lockbox storage. After about 10 minutes, I saw it. A faded sign, half covered in overgrown weeds, pointing down a narrow gravel road. The headlights cut through the darkness, revealing a long row of storage units. Most were old, rusted, paint peeling from the doors. The place looked deserted. I parked near the entrance and got out. The air smelled like damp metal and dust. The crunch of gravel under my shoes was the only sound. As I walked past the rows, I checked the numbers -24, 25, 26, until something caught my eye. Unit 31 had a small red lock on it. Brand new, shiny, completely out of place among all the rusted ones. I stopped in front of it. My heart was pounding so hard it made my hands tremble. One didn't have the key, of course, but I had bolt cutters in my trunk, something Derek always kept for yard work. I stood there for a moment, trying to decide if I really wanted to go through with this. I could just walk away, call the police, pretend I didn't find anything. But something deep inside me, some mix of anger and curiosity, pushed me forward. A few minutes later, I clipped the lock and pulled up the door. The smell hit me first, not rotten or foul, but old, stale, like dust and gasoline. The inside was dark, except for a single overhead bulb that flickered when I flipped the switch. It wasn't empty. There was a couch, a small table, and a couple of cardboard boxes stacked neatly in the corner. On the wall hung a few framed photos, all of us, me and Derek, from years ago. Vacations, birthdays, Christmas mornings. But the strangest part, the faces in the photos had been altered, cut, torn. In every single one, my face had been scratched out. I froze. My breath came out in short, uneven gasps as I stepped closer. On the table was a stack of letters, my handwriting, old cards, notes I'd written him over the years. Every single one had been opened, folded, and highlighted in random places. Some phrases circled, some words underlined, forever, trust, home. I opened one of the boxes. Inside were women's items, a scarf, a necklace, a few makeup products, things that didn't belong to me. At the bottom of the box was something even stranger, a small black notebook. I picked it up and flipped it open. Inside were names, dozens of them, women's names, each with dates next to them. Some I recognized from his phone contacts. Others were strangers. But at the very end of the list was my name, and next to it, a single date. October 15th. Tomorrow? I felt the blood drain from my face. I stared at that date, my hands shaking uncontrollably. What did it mean? Was it a reminder? A plan? I didn't know. But I suddenly felt exposed, like he could be anywhere, watching me right now. I dropped the notebook, grabbed my phone, and backed toward the exit. My first thought was to call the police, but before I could, I heard something, the crunch of gravel behind me. I spun around. A pair of headlights appeared at the end of the row, slowly moving toward me. It was Derek's truck. My heart slammed against my ribs. I turned off the light, ducked behind one of the other units, and tried to steady my breathing. The truck stopped near Unit 31. The engine cut off. I heard the driver's door open, and then his voice, calm, steady, almost too calm. "Rachel," he called out into the darkness. "I know you're here." The sound of his voice froze me in place. It wasn't angry. It wasn't panicked. It was calm, the kind of calm that felt practiced, deliberate, wrong. I pressed myself against the cold metal wall of the storage unit, my heart hammering so loud I was sure he could hear it. The night was silent except for his footsteps crunching on the gravel, slow, careful, getting closer. "Rachel," he said again, quieter this time. "You shouldn't have come here." I wanted to run, Every instinct screamed at me to bolt for the car, to get away before he found me. But if I made a sound, if he saw me, I didn't know what he would do. So I stayed still. Through the narrow crack between the doors, I could see his shadow moving across the row of units. He walked up to number 31, the one I'd broken into, and stopped. For a few seconds, he just stared at the open door. Then he sighed. "I warned you," he said softly. He stepped inside. The metal echoed as he moved around. I could hear him opening boxes, maybe seeing the mess I'd made. Then silence. I tried to use that moment to slip away. I crouched low, keeping my body close to the ground, and started moving toward the end of the row. The gravel crunched under my shoes no matter how carefully I stepped, but I had to risk it. I was maybe 20 feet from my car when I heard his voice again, louder now. "Don't go." I froze. "I know what you found," he said, his tone shifting, darker, almost pleading. "But it's not what you think." My hands were trembling so badly that I fumbled my keys trying to unlock the car door. He stepped out of the unit, the light spilling behind him. I could see his silhouette now, tall, still, watching me. "Just listen," he said. "Please. Stay back," I managed to say, my voice shaking. "Don't come any closer." He lifted his hands slowly, like he wanted to show he wasn't a threat. "Rachel, I didn't hurt anyone. You have to believe me." "Then what is all of that?" I snapped. "The photos, the names, the date, my name. Derek. What does it mean?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked down at the ground, like he was searching for the right words. It's therapy," he said finally. I almost laughed. "Therapy? I've been seeing someone, a counselor. She told me to write everything down. Every mistake, every person I've hurt, every date that meant something. The 15th, it's not what you think. It's the day I was supposed to tell you everything." He took a step closer. "I wanted to be honest with you, Rachel. For the first time, I didn't move. My mind was torn between fear and confusion." He sounded sincere, desperate, even, but how could I trust a word coming out of his mouth? "Then why hide it here?" I asked. "Why keep all of that in a locked storage unit?" He hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. "Because," he said finally, "I didn't want you to see it until I was ready." I shook my head. "That's not good enough." I got in the car, slammed the door, and started the engine. Derek rushed forward, knocking on the window. His face looked pale in the headlights, eyes wide, pleading. "Rachel, wait." I reversed hard, the tires skidding on gravel, and sped out of the lot without looking back. As I drove, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight they hurt, I kept replaying his words. It's therapy. Maybe it was true. Maybe it wasn't. But either way, I knew one thing for certain. Derek had been living a double life for far longer than I'd realized. And the part that scared me most wasn't what I'd already seen. It was what he hadn't shown me yet. I didn't stop driving until I was miles away from that storage lot. My hands were stiff around the steering wheel, my knuckles white, and my heart had slowed down once since I'd pulled out of there. Every time I blinked, I saw that notebook, the list of women's names, the dates. My own name at the end. Derek's face when he found me there replayed in my mind like a film I couldn't turn off. By the time I reached the next town, I pulled into a gas station parking lot and just sat there. The fluorescent lights buzzed above me, the only sound in the still night. My phone was full of missed calls, all from Derek. I didn't dare answer. Instead, I texted Anna. "Me. He found me. At the storage unit." "Anna. What? Are you safe?" "Me. For now. But I don't know what to do next." "Anna. Go to the police, Rachel. Don't go near him again." She was right, but something in me hesitated. The police wouldn't understand. A box of torn photos and a creepy notebook didn't prove anything. And Derek could talk his way out of anything. He always could. Still, I needed someone to know. I called my brother, Mark. We hadn't spoken in months, not since Head told me he didn't trust Derek and I'd defended him. I hated that Head been right. When Mark answered, his voice was groggy. "Rachel, it's almost midnight. What's wrong?" "I found something," I said, trying to steady my breathing. "About Derek." There was a pause. "What did he do this time?" "It's not just cheating, Mark. I stopped. "It's worse. I found this storage unit. He had photos of us, but my face was scratched out, and a notebook with women's names. Mine was in it, dated tomorrow." Silence. Then, "Where are you right now?" "On Route 89. Near the gas station off exit 12. Stay there. Don't move." "I'm coming to get you," he said firmly. I wanted to argue, to tell him I'd be fine, but the truth was, I wasn't fine. I felt like I was one wrong move away from falling apart. It took him about 40 minutes to get there. When his headlights pulled into the lot, I felt this wave of relief. Like I could finally breathe again. He stepped out of the car, wearing an old hoodie, eyes scanning the parking lot like he expected Derek to appear at any second. "You look like hell," he said softly, but there was no judgment in his voice, just concern. I told him everything: the motel, the cheating, the missing car, the storage unit, the notebook. He listened quietly, jaw tightening with every word. When I finished, he rubbed his face. "You can't go back home tonight," he said. "He knows where you live. You'll stay with me and Claire for now." I nodded, grateful. I hadn't realized how exhausted I was until then. As we started to leave, I noticed a car pulling into the gas station, a dark gray truck. My stomach dropped. It looked just like Derek's. "Mark," I whispered, "get in the car." He followed my gaze, and his whole body tensed. "Is that?" "I think so," I said, already sliding into the passenger seat. The truck slowed as it passed us, the driver's face hidden in shadow. I couldn't tell if it was him, but I didn't need to. I could feel it was. Mark didn't hesitate. He pulled out of the lot, keeping his eyes on the rearview mirror. The truck lingered for a few seconds, then turned off the road in the opposite direction. But my heart wouldn't calm down, because even though we'd driven away, I couldn't shake the feeling that Derek wasn't finished. He knew where I lived. He knew where I worked. And now, he knew that I knew. Tomorrow, October 15th, was the date in that notebook. And it wasn't here yet. Mark's house was about 30 minutes outside the city, quiet, tucked into a small neighborhood surrounded by trees. Normally, I found that kind of isolation comforting. That night, it just made me feel trapped. Claire, his wife, opened the door when we pulled up. She looked surprised to see me, standing there with a duffel bag and red, swollen eyes. But she didn't ask questions. She just pulled me into a hug. "Come in," she said softly. "Whatever's going on, you're safe here." Those words, "you're safe here," hit harder than I expected. For the first time since the motel, I felt like I could let my guard down. I slept in their guest room that night, but slept is a generous word. I kept waking up every hour, convinced I heard something outside. A car engine, a door creaking, footsteps on the gravel. Each time, I'd sit up, heart pounding, staring at the curtains until I convinced myself it was nothing. By morning, I was exhausted. Claire made coffee while Mark sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open. He was looking something up, typing quickly. "I checked," he said without looking up. "That storage place on Route 89, the one you mentioned, there have been reports before. Some kind of shady management, unregistered rentals, people using them under fake names." My stomach tightened. So Derek might not even have used his real name. He nodded. "Probably not, but there's a way to find out." I called a friend of mine. She works with the county records office. She can pull the rental list. We'll see if there's any connection. I didn't know what to say except, "Thank you." Mark looked at me, serious. "Ratch, I don't know what has caught up in, but you're not going back there until we figure it out." "Okay." I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. The notebook, the names, the date today. What if that date wasn't just about him confessing something? What if it was a deadline? After breakfast, I went to the bathroom to splash water on my face. When I came back, my phone, which I'd left on the kitchen counter, was lit up with a new text message. A known number. "You shouldn't have gone through my things." My hands went cold. "Mark," I said, my voice shaking. He found my number. Mark came over and looked at the phone. The message didn't show a contact name, but I didn't need one. I knew it was Derek. Then another text came through. "A known number. We need to talk. Tonight. You owe me that much." "Like hell," Mark muttered, grabbing the phone. "You're not going anywhere near him." But before I could respond, a third message appeared. "A known number. You don't understand. You're in danger too." I stared at the words, confusion flooding through me. "What does that mean?" I whispered. Mark frowned. "Has trying to mess with your head. That's what abusers do. Ignore it." But I couldn't ignore it. The phrasing was off, not threatening, not manipulative, but warning. I replayed everything in my mind, the boxes, the scratched-out photos, the list of names. What if the other women weren't just flings? What if something had happened to them? I picked up my phone again, my pulse quickening. "Me? What do you mean, danger?" A minute passed. Then came the reply. "A known number. Someone's been following me. They know what you found. Please, just meet me. One last time. They'll explain everything." I showed Mark. He shook his head immediately. "No way. It's a trap." Maybe he was right. But deep down, something about that message felt different. Desperate. Real. If Derek was lying, I'd know it when I saw him. But if he wasn't, if there really was someone else involved, Then walking away could be a mistake. Rachel, Mark said, noticing my hesitation, promise me you won't go near him. I met his eyes. I promise. But later that night, when everyone was asleep, I quietly slipped out of the house, and I drove to meet Derek. I don't even know what I was thinking when I left the house that night. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe curiosity. Maybe I just needed answers more than I needed safety. The roads were empty, the world unnervingly still. I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see headlights behind me. But there was nothing, just darkness and the soft hum of the engine. Derek's message had given me a location, the overlook by Ridge Hill. The one where we used to go years ago to watch fireworks in the summer. Back then, it was a place that meant peace. Now, it just felt like a bad idea. When I arrived, his truck was already there, parked off to the side. The engine was off, but the headlights were on, casting pale beams across the gravel. I parked a few feet away, left the keys in the ignition, just in case, and stepped out. The night air was cold and sharp. I could see my breath when I called out, "Derek." He stepped out of the truck slowly. He looked rough, like he hadn't slept in days. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. But what stood out most was the fear. Not guilt, not anger, fear. "Rachel," he said softly, "you shouldn't have come." "Then why did you ask me to?" He rubbed a hand over his face. "Because I didn't know what else to do. I think someone's been following me." I folded my arms, keeping my distance. "You're paranoid, Derek. Maybe you should be." He shook his head. "No, listen to me. The notebook, the women, it wasn't what you think. I met them all through a support group for people dealing with addiction, infidelity, guilt. I was supposed to track progress, write names, dates, sessions. That's what the list was. I swear." It sounded rehearsed, but his voice cracked at the end, like he wanted to believe it himself. "And my name?" I asked. Why was I at the bottom? He hesitated. "Because you were the reason I started the list. I wanted to change for you. The 15th was supposed to be the day I told you everything." I wanted to believe him. God, part of me still did. But then I remembered the storage unit, the scratched-out photos, the hidden boxes, the lies. "If that's true," I said, "then why hide it? Why rent that place under a fake name?" He looked at me, pain flashing across his face. "Because I didn't want them to find it." "Who's them?" I asked. "The people who run the group. It's not what I thought it was. It's not therapy, Rachel. It's something else." I frowned. "You're not making sense." "They keep track of us," he said quickly, looking around like he expected someone to be listening. "They know everything. Where I go, who I talk to." I tried to leave, but they threatened me. "Derek, I'm serious," he snapped, voice trembling. "One of the women, her name was Andrea, she tried to disappear. 2 weeks later, her car was found at the same motel where you stayed. Empty. She's gone, Rachel. No one's seen her since." My stomach turned cold. "You're saying someone took her?" He nodded slowly. "And now they think I talked to you about it." "Why would they think that?" "Because they know you went to the storage unit," he said. "They were watching it." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the wind moving through the trees. Then he took a step closer. "Rachel, I'm sorry for everything I did, for all of it. But you need to go. Tonight. Leave town. Don't go home, don't go to work, just leave." I could see the desperation in his eyes. Whether it was fear or guilt, I couldn't tell. "Derek," I said quietly, "if what you're saying is true, we need to go to the police." He shook his head frantically. "No. You don't understand. The police can't help. Some of them are part of it." "Part of what?" Before he could answer, a pair of headlights appeared behind us, bright and sudden. Derek's face went pale. "Oh God," he whispered. "They found us." The headlights cut through the darkness like knives. Derek grabbed my arm and pulled me behind his truck, his hand shaking. "Stay down," he whispered harshly. I crouched behind the wheel, my heart slamming against my ribs. Gravel crunched as the car stopped a few yards away. The lights stayed on, blindingly bright, making it impossible to see who was inside. "Derek," I whispered. "Who is that?" He didn't answer. He just kept staring, his jaw clenched, his breathing fast. Then, slowly, the car door opened. A man stepped out, tall, wearing a dark jacket. He stood still for a few seconds, then started walking toward us. "Derek Miller." The man called out. His voice was calm, too calm. "We need to talk." Derek's grip on my arm tightened. "Get in the truck," he said under his breath. "What?" "Now, Rachel. Go." I hesitated, but his tone made it clear there wasn't time to argue. I scrambled into the passenger seat, slamming the door just as Derek jumped behind the wheel. The engine roared to life, tires spitting gravel as he threw the truck into reverse. The man shouted something, I couldn't make out the words, and then another pair of headlights appeared behind us. Another car. Derek, what the hell is happening? I yelled. He didn't answer, just turned the wheel sharply and sped down the hill. The truck bounced over potholes, the headlights shaking across the trees. My seatbelt locked as we hit a dip in the road. In the mirror, the cars followed, their beams flickering through the dust. They're not supposed to be here, Derek muttered, more to himself than to me. They're not supposed to know this place. Who are they? He swallowed hard. People from the group. Or connected to it. I don't know anymore. But if they think I told you something, they won't let us go. I turned to look at him. Then why bring me here? Because you had to know. His voice cracked. You had to know what I was trying to protect you from. I looked out the window, the dark road winding through trees, no houses, no signs of life. Just blackness. Then, as suddenly as it started, Derek veered off the road into a narrow dirt path. Branches scraped against the sides of the truck, the engine groaning as he pushed through. Finally, he stopped. The engine idled, both of us gasping for air. The following cars didn't appear right away, maybe we'd lost them. I looked at him. Sweat ran down his temple, his hands trembling on the steering wheel. Derek, I said quietly, this isn't normal. We have to go to the police. Even if you're scared, we can't run forever. He stared out the windshield. You don't understand. I tried that. They don't listen. They just make things worse. What things? He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded envelope. This, he said. Take it. I stared at it but didn't move. Derek, just take it, Rachel. Please. If something happens to me, give this to Mark. He'll know what to do. The sound of an engine echoed in the distance, faint but growing louder. They found us again, he said. He shoved the envelope into my hand. Go out through the trees. There's a service road about a quarter-mile east. You'll see lights from the highway. What about you? He gave me a small, tired smile. I'll distract them. I shook my head. No. I'm not leaving you here, but before I could finish, he leaned over and pressed his forehead against mine. His voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry for everything. Then he pushed the door open, jumped out, and ran toward the sound of the engines. Derek, I shouted after him. He didn't look back. The night swallowed him whole. And then, seconds later, I heard it. A gunshot echoing through the trees. The gunshot froze me. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It was a single, sharp crack that shattered the silence, then nothing. No voices, no footsteps, just the echo fading into the dark woods. Derek, I whispered, my throat tight. I wanted to run after him. Every part of me screamed too. But then I remembered what Head said, go east to the service road. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grab the envelope Head given me. I shoved it into my jacket pocket, pushed open the door, and ran. The forest was thick, branches whipping against my face as I stumbled through the underbrush. The only light came from the faint glow of the moon through the treetops. Every sound, every rustle of leaves made me flinch. Behind me, engines revved again. Voices shouted something I couldn't make out. They were close. I kept running, heart hammering, my shoes slipping on damp soil. I could feel twigs breaking under my feet, hear the brush of footsteps somewhere behind me. When I finally saw a faint orange glow in the distance, the service road Derek mentioned, I nearly cried. I pushed myself harder, breaking through the last line of trees. A few trucks rumbled past in the distance. Civilization. Safety. But just as I started to move toward the road, someone grabbed my arm from behind. I screamed and tried to pull away, but a familiar voice hissed, Rachel. It's me, Mark. He was panting, flashlight in one hand. Jesus, Rach, what the hell are you doing out here? I could barely get the words out. They found us. Derek's head slowed down, he said, gripping my shoulders. What do you mean, they? Before I could answer, another sound cracked through the trees. Another gunshot. Then another. Mark swore under his breath and pulled me toward his car parked off the side of the service road. We're leaving, now. We jumped in, and he hit the gas. As the car sped away, I looked back through the window. The outline of the forest shrinking behind us. Was that him? He asked quietly. I didn't answer. I didn't want to. We drove in silence for several miles, the envelope still clutched in my hand. Finally, Mark noticed it. What's that? Derek gave it to me, I said softly. He said if something happens to him, give it to you. He glanced at me, confusion flashing in his eyes. To me? I nodded. We pulled over at a rest stop, the air buzzing with the sound of insects and passing cars. I turned on the overhead light and carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a small notebook page, a flash drive, and a photograph. The photo showed Derek standing with a group of people, maybe a dozen, outside a building with a faded sign that read Clear Path Renewal Center. The same name I'd seen in his notebook. On the back of the photo, in Derek's handwriting, were the words, "If they find me, it's because I tried to stop them. Trust no one." Mark took the flash drive, frowning. "We'll see what's on it when we get home." But I noticed something else in the envelope. A folded piece of paper with a short note scrawled in Derek's messy handwriting. It said, "Rachel, if you're reading this, it means they got to me first. Don't believe what they tell you about me. Check the drive. You'll understand everything." I sat there in the car, staring at the words until they blurred. Mark reached over and gently took my hand. "We'll figure this out," he said. "I promise." But when I looked at him, something inside me twisted, because Derek's warning echoed in my head. Trust no one. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I could even trust Mark. Mark didn't say much on the drive back. The glow of the dashboard lit his face, but his expression was unreadable. Too calm for what we'd just gone through. I kept glancing down at the envelope, my fingers tracing the edge of Derek's note. Trust no one. The words repeated in my mind, louder each time. When we got to his house, it was nearly 2 in the morning. The neighborhood was silent, every window dark. Mark parked in the driveway, killed the engine, and said quietly, "Let's go inside." "Well, check the drive there." I hesitated. "Maybe we should go to the police instead." He shook his head. "Not yet. We don't even know what's on this thing. If it's what you think, evidence of something criminal, we need to understand it before handing it over." I wanted to argue, but he was already unlocking the door. Inside, everything felt off. The house was too still, too quiet. Even the ticking of the clock sounded wrong. Mark set his keys down and motioned for me to follow him into his office. A small room filled with books, papers, and an old computer on a wooden desk. He plugged the flash drive in. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then a folder appeared on the screen labeled Sessions. Mark clicked it open. Inside were dozens of video files, each with a date and a name. My stomach dropped when I saw one labeled Andrea 0415. The woman Derek mentioned. The one who had vanished. Mark opened the file. The video was grainy, like it had been recorded by a cheap security camera. A woman sat in a chair in a small room, blank walls, harsh lighting. Her hands were folded in her lap. She looked nervous, eyes darting toward someone off-screen. A man's voice asked questions. Calm, rehearsed. "Andrea, have you been honest during your renewal process?" "Yes," she whispered. "Do you believe you deserve forgiveness?" She hesitated. "I don't know." The man sighed. "Then well, continue your sessions." The screen cut to black. I looked at Mark, horrified. "What the hell is this?" He didn't answer. He just opened another file, Derek 0601. This time, it was Derek sitting in the same room. He looked younger, pale, tired. The same man's voice asked, "Have you maintained contact with Rachel?" Derek looked up, startled. "No. I told you, I haven't spoken to her in weeks." The man leaned closer to the camera, though his face was still out of frame, and said quietly, "If you're lying, you know what happens." Then the screen went dark again. I took a step back, my pulse pounding. "Mark, this is some kind of cult. It's not therapy, it's control." He wasn't lying. Mark stayed silent, his eyes still fixed on the screen. "Mark," I said again, my voice breaking. He finally looked at me. His expression had changed, not shocked, not afraid, but conflicted. "I need you to listen to me," he said softly. "What you saw, it's complicated." "What are you talking about?" He stood up slowly, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't know it would go this far. I thought it was helping people. I thought they were." I froze. "You knew about this." His eyes flicked to mine. "Not everything. But yes, I helped fund them, once, years ago. When Derek first joined, he came to me for help getting in." The room spun. "You what?" "I thought it was legitimate," he said quickly. "A rehabilitation program for people trying to rebuild their lives. I swear, Ratch, I didn't know what they were really doing." I backed away, my chest tightening. "You're lying." "Rachel, no," I said, louder. "You knew. You knew something was wrong, and you didn't say a damn word." He took a cautious step forward. "I didn't want to drag you into it." Please, before he could finish, the computer chimed. Another file was loading on its own. Rachel 1012. My name. Today's date. I felt the blood drain from my face. Mark froze. "Don't open that," he said quickly. But I already had. The video showed a camera view of Mark's kitchen, from inside his house, and there I was, walking in that morning. Someone had been recording me. I turned slowly toward him. "What did you do?" Mark didn't answer. He just sighed, rubbed his eyes, and whispered, almost sadly, I told them you'd come. I stared at Mark, my mouth dry, words stuck somewhere between disbelief and terror. You what? He didn't move toward me, but the way he stood, too still, too careful, told me everything. The calm mask had worn since the woods finally cracked, and beneath it was something colder. I didn't have a choice, he said quietly. They came to me days ago. Said Derek had gone rogue, that had taken things he wasn't supposed to. They told me if I didn't cooperate, they'd come after Claire. After my family. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear. So you sold me out? I tried to protect you, he said quickly. They wanted to know if you'd found anything, the notebook, the storage unit, the files. They knew you'd eventually come to me. I thought if I kept you close, I could control it. I backed toward the door, my hand shaking. Control it. You've been spying on me, Mark. Recording me. He exhaled, guilt flickering across his face. It wasn't me who set up the cameras. They did. I didn't even know until today that you were already being watched. Then who the hell are they? I demanded. He hesitated, and for a long moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said quietly, they call themselves the Renewal Project. Started as a private rehabilitation group for addiction, infidelity, behavioral therapy. They promised results, claimed they could rebuild broken lives. But the deeper you got, the less choice you had. I swallowed hard. And Derek, he tried to leave, Mark said, his voice breaking. He found out something, I don't know what, and started gathering evidence. The people running the project didn't like that. My throat tightened. That's why they killed him. Mark looked away. I don't know if he's dead, but if he's not he won't be free for long. I stared at him, the room spinning. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I thought if you didn't get involved, they'd leave you alone. They followed me to a motel. They stole my car. They sent people after me in the woods. I am involved, Mark. He flinched at my tone but didn't argue. You're right, and now the only thing we can do is finish what Derek started. I frowned. What do you mean? He turned back to the computer and pulled up a second folder on the flash drive labeled Core Members. Inside were scanned documents, contracts, financial statements, lists of donors. I recognized some of the names immediately. Business owners, city officials, even a retired police captain. They're everywhere, Mark said. The group funds half the programs in this county. If we go public with this, it's going to explode. I felt a wave of nausea. They won't let us. He looked at me, his eyes tired. That's why we have to move fast. There's someone I trust, a journalist. She can take this, publish everything. But we have to get her the drive before they find us. Before I could respond, headlights flashed through the window. A slow sweep of white light across the walls. Mark froze. They're here. My body went cold. How do they know? He cut me off. Because I told them to meet here at midnight. I turned to him, horrified. You said you wanted to help me. I do, he said, desperate now. I told them you'd hand over the drive in exchange for protection. That's the only way we both survive this. I shook my head, backing away. You don't get it. Once they have the drive, we're both dead. Outside, car doors slammed. Footsteps crunched on gravel. Mark turned to the window, pale. Then we run. He grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the back door, but I jerked free. You go, I said. I'm done trusting you. Rachel, please. The front door burst open. Voices shouted, flashlights cut through the dark hallway. Mark pushed me toward the stairs. Upstairs? Go. I hesitated just long enough to see one of the men step inside, tall, wearing a dark coat. The same man from the overlook. He saw me. Rachel, he called, voice calm, deliberate. It's over. Just give us the drive. Mark pulled a gun from a drawer, something I didn't even know he had, and fired once. The man ducked behind the wall. Go, Mark shouted again. I ran. Up the stairs, down the hall, into the small guest room. I slammed the door and locked it, my chest heaving. Outside, footsteps thundered. Voices barked orders. I looked around wildly, searching for an escape, a window, a ledge, anything. And that's when I realized I still had Derek's notebook in my jacket pocket. I pulled it out, flipping to the back cover. Hidden beneath the lining was a small folded map, with one word written on it in bold black ink. Sanctuary. I stared at the word sanctuary until it barely looked like a word anymore, until it became something abstract, almost meaningless. But my instincts told me Derek had left it there for a reason. Outside the door, the sounds of chaos continued, footsteps, shouting, the sharp echo of something heavy crashing to the floor. Then, silence. The kind that only happens when everyone's listening for movement. My breath caught. I looked toward the window. It was small, but maybe just big enough to fit through. The street below was dimly lit, no one in sight. I forced the latch open and pushed the frame up, wincing at the creak. A voice shouted from downstairs, "She's upstairs." I didn't think. I climbed onto the ledge, swung my legs out, and dropped. The fall wasn't far, but it knocked the air out of me. I hit the grass hard, rolled, and scrambled to my feet. I didn't look back. I ran down the block barefoot, clutching Derek's notebook and the flash drive so tight my knuckles hurt. Every step felt like it echoed for miles. Every sound behind me, a door opening, a car starting, made me flinch. I didn't stop running until I reached the main road, where headlights passed and civilization returned. I flagged down a taxi. The driver looked me up and down, wild hair, dirt on my face, shaking hands, but didn't ask questions. "Where to?" he said. I hesitated, then opened the map Derek had hidden. It was hand-drawn, with rough lines marking the edge of the town. Then a small circle deep in the forest labeled Sanctuary. "North Ridge," I said finally. "As far as you can take me." The ride was silent except for the hum of the engine. I stared out the window, watching streetlights fade into dark trees. When the taxi stopped, the driver said, "This is the end of the road." I paid him, or tried to, but he just shook his head. "You look like you've had a night. Be careful out there." And then he drove off, leaving me alone in the quiet wilderness. I followed the dirt path Derek had drawn. My flashlight flickered over tree trunks, roots, and finally, after what felt like an hour, a small wooden cabin appeared in the clearing. I stopped, heart racing. A light was on inside. For a moment, I thought about turning back, but I forced myself forward and knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again. Finally, the door opened, and standing there, alive but bruised, was Derek. "Rachel," he whispered. I froze. You're alive." He nodded slowly. "Barely. I didn't think you'd find this place." I stepped inside. The cabin was small, a single room, cluttered with papers, an old radio, a generator humming softly. He sat down heavily in a chair, wincing. "They think I'm dead. That's the only reason I'm still breathing." I sank into the chair across from him, still shaking. "Mark's gone. The renewal people found us." I barely got out. Derek's face darkened. "Then they'll come here next." I pulled out the flash drive and the notebook, setting them on the table. "I have everything. The files, the names, even the video of me in Mark's house." He looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time since all this started, I saw something I hadn't before. Relief. "You did it," he said quietly. "You got the proof. Now what?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "There's a contact I've been talking to, a journalist named Ellen Pierce. She's been investigating them for years. If we can get this to her, the entire project will fall apart. And if they find us first." He gave a small, tired smile. "Then at least we tried." For a moment, the two of us just sat there, surrounded by darkness, exhaustion, and the faint sound of wind against the cabin walls. After everything, the lies, the fear, the running, there was a strange peace in that silence. Finally, Derek stood and handed me a small folded note. "If anything happens to me again, go to this address. Don't stop, don't call anyone, just go." I took it, nodding. "You think we'll make it?" He looked at me with something like hope. "If we don't, they win." The night outside was still and endless. Somewhere in the distance, I thought I heard an engine, faint to be sure. Derek reached over, turned off the lantern, and whispered, "Get some rest. We move at dawn." And in that dark cabin, with the weight of the flash drive in my pocket and the echo of everything we'd lost hanging in the air, I finally understood what sanctuary meant. It wasn't safety, it was survival.